Great. Welcome to the Educator Excellence Committee for the State Board of Education. We are going to continue focusing today on how we support first-year teachers, knowing that teacher retention is a top issue and the high rates in which first-year educators are leaving our system and asking for additional support. And at our last meeting, we hosted a panel of folks from other state contexts sharing what they do. And so on the agenda today, debriefing that conversation and continuing that conversation, as well as thinking through action steps for us to do the next piece of the work, which is doing a broader analysis of what is and isn't being done to support first-year teachers in DC in more depth and to analyze that in more detail. So I'll start by opening with a question to the committee members and to the staff on reflections from the panel and ideas that came up for folks that you think are worth exploring further of how other states are doing it, or how any other questions or reflections from what was shared.
Rep Henderson, take it away.
Another thing that I'm wondering about that is just a question for me is the relationship between the early career supports and whatever prior training the teacher had, because I'm thinking, in addition to the types of programs that Taylor is noting for us that exist already in DC, I'm thinking about like some of the fellow programs like NYU fellows, urban teachers, and so on. I don't know if those programs have components that are like these supports that we're looking at.
I like that a lot. I also know that the scale of those programs is just so limited relative to the size of our workforce, right? And so how do we actually do what they're doing at scale, operationalize it? But I love that. Taylor, is that something you would have the capacity to check in with them on?
For sure, yeah.
Absolutely. I know on mine and Taylor's end, we were thinking about this as well. Also, Haley, who's our new policy analyst, had shared with us that, her experience from when she was a teacher, and also kind of the differences for those teachers who had done like Teach for America, for example, also having different types of professional development experiences as new teachers. So it's something that we had talked about as well in thinking about what other information needs to be gathered.
Great. Thank you, Rep Henderson. Rep Williams?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I remember that I found interesting from the Delaware Department of Education representative was just like tying teacher professional development and growth to licensure as like a real way of making sure that it does get implemented. I mean, that seemed very common sense to me. I've noticed as a teacher myself the disconnect between the professional development that I do and like get it renewing my license. I think it doesn't need to be so prescriptive in that, like for like veteran teachers and such, that there can be a lot of flexibility as to how teachers improve their craft. But for new teachers in particular, there are some basics on pedagogy that we need to make sure everyone has if we're going to improve the quality of teaching. Like, I've been clear on this for years that the number one in-school resource that drives student achievement is the quality of teaching. And it's one reason why I sought national board certification. It's one reason why I'm continually disappointed in our city for not offering any additional supports or incentives for achieving national board certification when Maryland is trying to retain teachers by offering like $10,000 bonuses for people to gain national board certification. Virginia has incentives in different school district charter schools here. I was able to be rewarded and supported in my national board journey there. But I think I digress in saying that I think that we really also kind of need some buy-in around what the WTU could do and how they could work with DCPS on this. I think that I've also heard since our last meeting that there are a variety of Northern Virginia school districts which already have really great mentorship models in play. And I've heard anecdotally from many people who went through the DCPS induction that the number of new teachers this year is even bigger than it was last year. So I have no doubt that this is a need. I do wonder kind of, where we focus our next steps and what ultimate outcomes we seek to achieve in terms of like a report or standards or whatnot. um but I think that we need to still prioritize this issue in terms of some type of policy implementation.
I think one of the actionable takeaways there, Rep. Williams, is also a Taylor ask here. As we're starting to look into and I think for the second half of this meeting, I would like to make sure that we get to the questions that we want to ask regarding what to clarify about what is already happening in DC and what isn't. But to take a look at what kinds of licensure requirements there are related to anything related here for any of the charters too. Taylor, as you look into and talk to the charter school, the Charter Alliance, and then comparing that to what how some of these states and have rolled this out and the extent to which they are, I guess, specifically requiring this for licensure. Ben, is there anything else that you would ask of the group or Taylor specifically in following up on what you observed and what you just named?
I think that I'd like to know as best we can, what types of supports are already in place, right? Like, and how can we quantify it? So the way I generally look at this is some schools have whole school professional development. Some schools have individual coaching. Some schools have department-based professional development and supports. But I would also want to know so those three categories of support, and then also what mentorship looks like and is already in place. You know, because I think that also makes a big difference.
It does. That this is before we dive in there, I'll throw out one additional observation. I shared some of the ideas that came up, like induction standards, with some of the educators that I know, predominantly reading instructors, as you can imagine. And I will say I got not a mixed response, but a warning, which was pretty resonant, which is we have a tendency, as they flagged to me, of taking a good idea like that, but then operationalizing it quite poorly so that it feels, even if it was done with good intentions, it feels like another checkbox and doesn't actually end up being implemented with quality, so that it becomes a checkbox for new teachers to have to go sit through this extra thing rather than something that's useful to them to follow the standard or follow the legislation that's put in place. And so I think, I took it as a caution of, if we're going to push for something like that, to really be thoughtful about how, when, what are the ways that we make this as low cost one, and also as cost efficient and effective for our educators, and know when it's no longer working and have a way out of it if it's not, right? Or a very clear way of flagging and improving it if it's not working. With that,
Let me add one idea
Yeah.
to that. So I think along those lines, I share that goal. I've experienced both the, hey, here's some extra things to do, and like, here's this thing that's embedded in my schedule that is helpful. And I'd like to create more spaces and time for the second for more teachers. I would like to clarify too, just like roles and responsibilities of what DCPS could do, and roles and responsibilities of like what the WTU can do. Um, I'm not under any illusion that it'll be a perfect like cooperation between them and collaboration. Um, but I think the more right that we have teachers at the table who have experienced this, who are kind of not just going from a top-down approach, but from a practitioner standpoint, the better it can be implemented.
I agree. And generally, I think the more buy-in and engagement we get from groups like the WTU to implement a new program rather than requiring legislation or a policy change, I also think that generally will work better, right? If that gets us to the goal that we need to get to. So with that, I think there's also the whole other sector of charters, right? And so thinking through, let's start this conversation then, and move and shift gears here to think about what are the kinds of questions that we have for what is or isn't being done in DC, as well as what is or isn't working in DC to date. I think there's a few things here that I would love to hear your thoughts on. One is, what kind of research do we want to do? I'm thinking at the very least, read through the policies, Taylor, thank you, and what is already kind of in place as a policy, as a standard, as a program, right? But then I think our options include, do we want to host another panel, right, where we bring in the educators to come talk to us? But we've done that with educators. What would it look like to bring in some of the other stakeholders to tell us more about what is like an OSCE or a DCPS or the Charter Alliance, right? To tell us what is or isn't already in place. And what other ways are there for us to get not only what the de jure policy is, but also de facto what the experience is in schools across our many different LEAs? What are some of the ideas that you have for how we get the information, and what are some of the key questions that you would have to help inform what is actually happening?
I think it depends a bit on what information the Charter Alliance has. I mean, it makes sense that we would go to them to ask for a sector-wide view, but I don't know how much they are going to know. I don't know that we'll be able to get like a comprehensive understanding of all the things that the various charter schools are doing for their early career teachers. That's kind of what I would want if it is possible. I would want to kind of know the whole breadth of what LEAs are doing. Um, if we don't, if we're not able to get that from the Charter Alliance, I'm not really sure what the best next step would be, but it would be
Right.
very instructive to know what, like, given that there's not a requirement, to know what or how extensively LEAs are opting into that type of program and what it looks like without a requirement to do so.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment of just like wondering, to what degree that information exists at a system-wide or sector-wide level. Um, and so I think just asking those questions should be pretty straightforward, but we'll get information as to where they're at. Um, I think also with regards to DCPS, like, I would want to just kind of know outside of just like the additional like professional development that is happening at prescribed professional development days, like what type of in-school support, and we've asked this to an extent with regards to the coaching practice previously through Aussie, but those are like only in isolated higher needs schools, and it's a small cohort, so I'm not like, I think LEAP is the citywide instructional improvement program that DCBS has, but um like I would want to know like what amount of hours and particular supports like teachers get in school rather than, hey, after school or on this professional development day, attend these trainings. Like, how often are people actually coming into teachers' classrooms that are not for the purpose of evaluation, but for the purpose of, improvement?
I'll throw in another question there too, which I think based on what we were hearing from the panel, Taylor, is how differentiated are trainings for first year teachers relative to just, refresher kind of required uh, or even opt-in offerings for everybody, right? And to what extent are different LEAs offering something different, and what does that menu look like across our different LEAs?
And so with me and my team, as you all know, the work that we do and how we plan it all out is based on the decisions that each committee makes, and then of course for board wide work, the decisions that are made at working sessions and public meetings. And so I think it has been mentioned, bringing in some of these stakeholders. I do think that from my perspective, this dedicated committee time or even having a separate time, like a roundtable or something, is an excellent place to get a lot of those questions answered. So I'm asking how you all would like to approach getting some answers to the questions that have been raised.
I would love the idea of getting like a, a charter alliance, either individual meetings with Charter Alliance, DCPS, Aussie, or having them all together and just a few kind of key questions. But I mean, there is a use the committee time, and then there is a, would Taylor have the capacity to have some initial conversations with them first so that we can read through what the key findings are and then use the time that we have all together to ask questions, building off of it rather than ask the 101 stuff in the meeting.
Well, yeah, I think either and both of those are possible. Darren and I delegate the work to Taylor based on what you all decide. So that's what we would do.
So my vote would be if Taylor could have conversations with each of those groups and kind of first give us a list of the questions she would ask them and take notes on, and then we can kind of see how much we can add to it, or shift things around. We review those notes and then bring them into one of these meetings so that we can follow up with some more clarifying perhaps more some questions that, to talk through would be my vote. What do you think, Rep Henderson, Rep Williams?
That makes sense to me, and I'm wondering, is there a reason why we wouldn't add the PCSB as well?
My understanding with them is that they don't actually do anything related to inputs, in the sense of like they hold the charter,
Yeah.
but it's much more based on the outcomes of the students, and very rarely does our PCSB get involved with. And again, this is my understanding, with the inputs of like these kinds of things. That seems to be all the Charter Alliance from my understanding. And I don't know if that's a rule or just, when it comes to literacy, that's how I've experienced it. But my guess would be that the Alliance would have
Better info.
more to add here. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah,
And maybe WTU too. Actually, sorry, as you're thinking about adding folks.
I know the W2 has a working group with this. So and it's kind of the work has started and stopped at different points over the last couple years. So they have their hands full right now with a couple other issues, as you can imagine. But I know that there are teachers that could speak to this there.
Could you connect them with Taylor?
Yeah, I can do that.
And you can include me on all that as well. Again, I will be guiding Taylor along the way with it. So she and I will be in it together.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Ben, are there other groups that you would say we should also at least do a broad scope with? Maybe we don't necessarily have them, at a committee meeting, but just get their take on.
I mean, I think from what I've heard, I think we're kind of taking a two-prong approach. Like based on last committee meeting, we're like hearing what works and what's effective in other states and other districts, right? And then and that was particularly at the state level, right? I would and then we're also just taking a general inventory and audit of where DC is on this at a local level. I think it might be wise and I'm not sure how quickly we need to act on this, but just to like know and learn from other surrounding districts, particularly in Northern Virginia or in Montgomery County, as to what these programs look like at a school district level there, so that we can have concrete recommendations or examples rather to also move forward with. So, the continued learning of like what works and what's already being implemented.
Yep.
And then where are we now?
And is the added relevance there for those that educators are deciding between any of those systems at any time, since they were porous? Or is there another significance for the finding the neighboring jurisdictions?
I think they have, from what I've heard, there's data that they're effective. And I mean, we haven't collected or reported rather on where teachers have gone publicly, but we know that certain teachers leave DC and go to surrounding areas. So it is also a strategy, I guess, for keeping teachers in DC.
Okay. Taylor, Jen, was there any reason why, and when you did initial outreach, what was the response from the neighboring groups?
Yeah, I can jump in. I reached out to Montgomery County because I did and was interested in looking in theirs. They didn't respond back, but we did hear back from Howard County.
Great. Would you share some of those insights with us, just to bump it up? I know you shared it, but just to bump it up for us again.
Sure. Right now, would you like to hear?
Just over email at some point.
Perfect.
Oh.
Gotcha.
Next week.
We'll include it in our follow-up.
Thank you. Thanks. And Rep Henderson, I saw your note about taking on some of the work. I mean, I think part of there's as we are information gathering, I think a second piece is not just what is technically done, but also, we started the whole committee with a panel with educators themselves and their experience, right? I think there's also the what has the experience been that, you know, is we got a few different examples there, and I know each of us have talked to first year teachers throughout the year, but doing that in a more systematic way is something that I think would also be really helpful for us. Either, you know, a mix of Taylor, Rep Henderson, if that's something that, right, we could start documenting of, you know, here are different experiences from different LEAs for different first year teachers at different times. What do you think, Rep Henderson?
Yes, I mean, especially you know, as we find what the charter schools are doing, we could probably zero in on some places to follow up on the experience.
What do we think about Taylor and Jen and the team coming up with some kind of a format for us to document these conversations, and then each of us take on some conversations with teachers that we know and ask them about their first year experience, and, you know, have a way to kind of consolidate what we've learned together.
I'm open to that.
That would work for me as well.
Great. I think we got plenty of homework for the next time. And again, I think still driving towards something actionable, right? I'm looking for, you know, I think we'll add value by sharing the information we collect, first and foremost, right? And I think that some kind of a report on this, it just the state of things relative to other states is helpful as a conversation starter. But I would love to go further than that and at least have, you know, one priority program or policy recommendation that rises to the top for us, right? And I'm not sure that I'm hearing from the group, correct me if I'm wrong, that through these various conversations, there's one that bubbles to the top for everybody right now. Is there?
I mean, I have a sense of like what I think practically works, but I think how we get there is a different question. So, I can't say like I can point to this, hey, let's do this, but I can point to attributes that I know will support new teachers to be more effective. I wouldn't say that that it's just like a cookie cutter program from one place to another that we should do.
Ben, would you
Or
be willing to write those up too, in the
yeah,
next month, so that Rep Henderson and I can also just have that, so we know what your thinking is there? Because you're right, you are a teacher that we would otherwise be interviewing to ask about your experiences and what you've seen, right? So I think it would be
yeah,
super helpful.
happy to.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to close out this meeting and look forward to moving all of these pieces forward together.
Yes, thank you. And Taylor and I will follow up with all of the action items that were just mentioned, as well
Thank you.
as the memos that she has produced so far.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and see you next Wednesday.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.